Good morning and welcome to another edition of NieCat Foundation of Excellence. Today we're going to learn about the ABLE Act. The ABLE Act is going to be a subject that Hiram, a financial planner from Coastal Wealth, will be sharing with us. And I want to thank you, Hiram, for being here. Before we start, I want to share some of our purposes with the audience. NieCat Foundation of Excellence was founded in order to give special needs adults from 23 to 35 a place to go to in order to receive their therapies. We have Medicaid waiver now at this point, and we are able to provide therapies for physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, as well as behavior therapy. We also train young adults with special needs on vocational skills in order to find them employment, and we could continue our literacy skills, or should I say their literacy skills. We are looking for partners. We are looking for grants. We are looking for volunteers and individuals that can see our vision and catapult us into where we know we will be, which will be a powerhouse for here in South Florida. With that in mind, I want to introduce Hiram, financial planner from Coastal Wealth. Good morning, Hiram.
Good morning. Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan, and for the opportunity to be here today to present to your families with this important information. Our workshops are geared to educate families on the different areas of planning that you need to think about, especially as your adult child has transitioned from being a minor to being an adult, and then eventually from being in the school education system to being outside of the education system, and whether they are going to be working in the community, earning an income, or maybe working in a nonprofit setting, just being an active participant of society. So it's really important that we educate ourselves and learn about the different planning tools that we have in our tool belt to make sure that we can provide for our children and our dependents. And one of those tools that we have on our tool belt is the ABLE Act account. And this presentation is geared to educate families on what is the ABLE Act account, when was it established, and what are some of the uses that it has. And we're going to just talk a little bit about how it works, and that way you can learn some more information. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, can I share my screen, Mrs. Sullivan, when you have a chance there?
Of course, of course. Okay, you have the ability to share your screen now.
Perfect. All right, so let's put our presentation up here. All right. So always a little mini disclosure. Some of the information we talk about may be tax or legal in nature. Mass Mutual does not employ tax or legal specialists, CPAs, or accountants. So just talk to a tax person if you have questions. What's the overview of the ABLE Act account? Well, President Barack Obama signed the Achieving a Better Life Experience, or ABLE Act, in December of 2014 as part of the Tax Increase Prevention Act. And the idea of the law was to allow eligible individuals with disability to have a tax-free savings account, which is modeled after the 529 accounts. For those of you that are familiar with 529 accounts, those are accounts that are established to save towards college expenses for our children. And so the way the legislation was written is that it requires each state to write kind of their own rulings about how the accounts can be set up and how they're established. And some information can be found at ABLE nrc.org. And we're going to go back to that website a little bit later. So what are the eligibility requirements for an ABLE account? Very important is the individual must be blind or disabled prior to the age of 26. And that age of 26 is important because it ties together with the same age requirement for Social Security. For those of you that may or may not know, in order for an individual to claim on their parents' Social Security record, they have to be deemed disabled prior to age 26, meaning they need to have had a disability prior to age 26. So they've used the same age criteria for an ABLE account. Just to keep some things simple, I realize that a lot of things out there are a little bit complicated, but at least this one thing, that age, is a little bit more simple. They can be greater than age 26 when opening an account, but as long as the disability occurred prior to turning 26. If the age criteria is met and the age of individuals are already receiving SSI or SSDI, Social Security Disability Income, then they're automatically eligible. So you will find, depending on which state you open an ABLE Act account in, and we may have some families that view this presentation that are not in the state of Florida where we are, there are different requirements or an application process in order to open an ABLE Act account. In Florida, for example, if the individual is not already receiving SSI or SSDI from their record or their parents' record, then a psychological evaluation is required, and it has to be done within the last 12 months. If the age criteria is met and the individual is not receiving SSDI, again, they must meet Social Security's definition and criteria of significant functional limitations and receive a letter of certification from a licensed physician. And what are the limits? So now we're talking about using the account. So here's some of the basics. The maximum annual contributions are limited to the annual IRS gift tax exclusion amount. So it's $15,000 currently. That hasn't changed since 2018. Very important for you to know is that this limit is from all sources. So an ABLE Act account can receive money from an individual's, as long as they're the named beneficiary, from their 529 account. So let's say early on, a parent created a 529 account for their child that maybe later was diagnosed with a disability. They can transfer 529 monies from that account to an ABLE Act account. You can also make transfers from a UTMA account, a Unified Transfer to Minors Act account, or you can make new deposits into the account. But no matter where the money is coming from, you cannot put any more than $15,000 a year into the account. We will talk about one other way that you can put a little bit more, but that's generally the restriction. What's the maximum amount you can have in the account? Currently, it's $100,000 for SSI recipients, and it's up to the state's 529 plan amount, which currently in the state of Florida is close to $400,000. So if they receive SSI, cannot have more than $100,000 in the account. If it goes to above 100,000, SSI will be stopped temporarily. It will not disqualify them from receiving SSI or cause an issue. It's just a temporary hold until the account balance comes down from that amount. Otherwise, it's up to the 529 plan limit if the individual is not receiving SSI. If the SSI recipient's ABLE account goes over $100,000, again, SSI benefit is suspended until the account comes back down. Doesn't affect Medicaid. Only one ABLE account allowed per person. You can only have one account, no matter who opens it, whether the individual opens it themselves or a parent, guardian, family member, grandparent opens the account. They can only have one in any state ever. So if they live in Florida and move to Georgia, they have to keep their Florida account or transfer the account to another provider in another state. Can only have one account. Contributions can be made by anyone. So anybody can put money into the account. It can be the individual themselves, family members, or friends, and it must be made in cash. You cannot transfer any assets like individual stocks or mutual funds, anything like that. Everything has to be liquidated and transferred into the account. One thing to note, which is important in Florida, is that we have the Able to Work program. The individual is working and in the Able to Work program, as long as the beneficiary is earning up to $12,760, so they can earn that or less or more, but up to that amount can be an additional contribution they can make to the account. So let's say they make $12,760 and they don't need or use or spend the money for whatever reason. Let's say they're receiving funds from a special needs trust that was established for them. They can contribute $15,000, or someone can contribute $15,000 for them. Plus, they can also contribute up to $12,760. So it's an interesting rule that's out there, which allows individuals that are working and may not spend the money that they earn to put it into the ABLE Act account. And these funds must come from the working individual's income, not from another source. So that extra amount has to come from their income, can't come from another source. So what is it that can be used for? You know, that's a big question. Well, why do we do this account? What can we use it for? And it ties together very, very well with a special needs trust, because you basically can use the funds for the same expenses. So what are some of the qualified disability expenses? It can be used for their education, housing, transportation, employment trainings and support assistive technology, like computers, tablets, or other assistive technology if they need communication devices and things like that. For their health, prevention, and wellness. So if they go to the gym or they have physical therapy, other services like that. Can also be used for financial management and administrative services. So if they, for example, are an individual on the spectrum but handle their own finances and choose to pay a financial planner or a financial individual to assist them in managing their money or just learning about what to do with their money, they can use some of the funds from ABLE Act account to pay for those services. And they can use them for legal fees as well. So if they need to draft documents or something, or whatever may be needed legally, they could also use the funds for that. It could also be used to pay for expenses to oversee the ABLE Act account, funeral and burial expenses, and basic living expenses. So for the most part, it's pretty flexible what it could be used for. The one thing that you have to be aware of is you cannot duplicate expenses, very much like you cannot duplicate expenses of monies that come out of a special needs trust. What does that mean? Let me give you an example. If the individual receives monies from SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, so basically what used to be called food stamps, and they receive the maximum amount, which is currently about $240 a month. If that money is enough for their needs for food, you can't take money out for that as well. So you can't duplicate the expense. So if you get monies from government benefits of a certain amount that are sufficient to cover your needs, and you can't duplicate the expense and say that you did a withdrawal to cover that same expense. It has to be in supplement. You have to supplement your expenses with these monies, just like you do from a special needs trust. There is one big kind of issue that is important to note, that there is a Medicaid payback or reimbursement to the state when the beneficiary dies or when the individual with a disability dies. For all that the state has paid for medical assistance, basically from the Medicaid services or Medicaid waiver services, and including third-party contributions after the account was created. So basically anything that the government deems an amount of money that they have paid, which after expenses is left over in the account, they could access or request that those funds be reimbursed to them. So let's say that, again, let's go back, and the individual has passed away, but still has some expenses that were pending. They had some financial services they had to finish paying, some legal fees. They were going to pay for funeral expenses from the ABLE account, and they had some kind of outstanding debt or bills, things that they needed to pay. All of that can be paid first prior to then Medicaid being reimbursed. You can also reimburse individuals that maybe have provided services or support to the individual, not immediate family, but let's say a caretaker and such. There may be some expenses that can be deemed as qualifying that the individual would have to pay back. And then whatever is left in the account is deemed Medicaid payback eligible, and that's where the state would look and say, okay, if there's something left, then you would owe us that money. That's very different to a special needs trust that's set up by another individual. So if a parent or a grandparent or any third party creates a special needs trust for the individual, whatever is left in those accounts after the individual passes away does not go back to Medicaid. Medicaid cannot request a payback, and those monies can be left to a beneficiary. Maybe it's the individual's siblings or family or friends, whoever it is that or a nonprofit like NieCat. Anyone can receive funds from a special needs trust, third-party special needs trust. It is not Medicaid payback eligible. So it's important to understand the difference, because an ABLE Act account is an excellent tool to use in conjunction with a special needs trust. And we'll talk about some examples of that in a minute. But I would say that, special needs trust gives a lot more flexibility in other aspects of planning. So here's just some basics on whether a state decides to adopt the ABLE account. This, for those of you that reside in Florida, is not so relevant, because Florida has decided to adopt the ABLE Act account. You can find it at ABLE United or ableunited.com. Lots of great information and resources there for you to learn about use of the account and how it works. So how can you open an account? An individual can enroll in any state's ABLE program. So as long as the state has a program and is accepting applicants from non-resident states. So if you wanted to open the Utah ABLE account program, you could do that as long as they're accepting Florida residents into their program. Why would you do that? It may be because they have a better service. For example, there are some states that do not have debit cards. The state of Florida does. So there might be an individual in North Carolina, let's say, that really wants to be able to use a debit card. Instead of opening the North Carolina ABLE account, they would open the Florida one because Florida has a debit card. So little things like that are important to educate yourselves on which type of account. I will say the ABLE United account in Florida is very good, very flexible. The investment options in the plan, you can invest the money in mutual funds in the stock market, or it can be very conservative and like a money market type of investment. There's a lot of different options at a low cost, and it's a very low cost account with a debit function. So it's a very flexible account. I would encourage you to go to the ableunited.com website and learn more. But there are a National Resource Center for ABLE account, ablenrc.org. Really important to go there just to learn a little bit about the uses of ABLE accounts, how they tie together with planning. And that leads me to things to consider. An ABLE account may not be the best vehicle if the monies are coming from an inheritance, a settlement, or a judgment, or contribution from family or beneficiaries that are greater than a maximum annual contribution. And examples of that are, we're always talking about planning for the individual. And as a parent, you have to think, what are the financial resources that my child or adult child or dependent are going to need if I'm not here anymore? Because right now, if you're working or you're providing financial resources to your dependent, that is good as long as you continue to work and are able to provide those financial resources. But once you're no longer here, and that's really what planning is all about, is thinking, what happens to my child if I'm not here anymore? What are they going to need both in healthcare, education, and financial resources? And what are the legal structures? What are the legal documents that I need to put in place to make sure that I can protect them from any predators or people that may want to take advantage of them? And one of those tools that we use a lot is a special needs trust. So how does a special needs trust work? A special needs trust is like creating a company that is managed for the benefit of your child or adult child with special needs. So the special needs trust will stipulate how the monies contributed to the trust are dispersed for the beneficiary. The trusts do have to have state-specific language to be sure that they follow the state rules. Like the qualified disability expenses are very similar to the types of expenses that can be used for with an ABLE Act account. You do need to name a trustee, which is basically the person who is responsible to carry out the terms of the trust agreement. So that's like your company manager. If you were to name a manager or a president, you want to name someone not only that's capable of understanding how to manage the money and how to spend it and what type of resources to employ to help them, like financial advisors or legal providers, but also that they're aware of what they are restricted in using the money for. They don't want to make a mistake that would cause your individual to lose government benefits. The trustee is obligated to act in accordance with these provisions and in the interest of the beneficiary. So in other words, they do have a fiduciary responsibility to your child that you're creating this trust for. And they could be subject to legal action if they don't comply. If someone looks at the situation and says, this doesn't look right, and they present the situation to the courts, they could be deemed out of fiduciary duty, and it could be an issue. So you want to make sure you put someone there that knows what they're doing and they take that seriously. There's many ways that special needs trust can be created. Now, what I do want to say here is we use ABLE Act accounts in conjunction with special needs trusts, and I'll give you an example. So typically a special needs trust is created for, again, a larger amount of money that needs to be left behind for the individual, the child, to be able to continue their lifestyle, their education. Their housing is one of the biggest expenses that are needed to be accounted for in planning and creating this trust. So those larger amounts of monies, again, it can't go into an ABLE account. You can't leave such a large amount of money in an ABLE Act account. It's not possible. So a special needs trust is used for that. For those monies. But an ABLE Act account is more for the day-to-day expenses. It allows for the individuals to have some independence, so that the account can be funded from monies that come out of the trust and put into the ABLE Act account, and then they can use the debit card for their day-to-day expenses. If they're able to go to a grocery store, they can use it for groceries. If they want to go online and go shopping on Amazon or Target or whatever place will accept the debit card as a form of payment, it gives them that independence that they can use the ABLE Act account, but also not access the large amount of money that would be left in a special needs trust for their major expense needs. So ABLE Act accounts are really used well in conjunction with special needs trusts, not replacing them. Our families really do need to, in most cases, have a special needs trust to receive those monies that they would leave behind to take care of the long-term financial and healthcare needs of the individual. The ABLE Act account is more of a function of giving them independence and allowing them to have some money saved instead of having that restriction of only being able to have $2,000 in their bank account, because that's what Social Security says that they can have. That's the maximum that they can have. ABLE Act account, as you've seen, if they receive SSI, they can have $100,000 in there, or if they don't and they have Social Security disability, they can have up to $400,000, for example, in the state of Florida. So it's important to work with a qualified professional that can advise you on what are the different planning tools that are in your tool belt and use them properly. And that's where we come in. We're happy to talk to any of you that is interested in learning more on how to use ABLE Act accounts or special needs trusts, or just planning in general. If you have questions about how to plan for your individual with special needs and what to do, whether it's life insurance, what type of life insurance you should have, or it's financial planning and what to do, what types of accounts are appropriate for our individual. Natalie and myself are happy to talk to you because we specialize in this area and we help a lot of families in our community to think things through and get organized. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to share this information. And if anyone has any questions or has anything that we can help with, we're always willing to speak to you and look forward to doing so.
I want to thank you for your expertise, Hiram. And I'm glad you left this slide open, because if you don't mind, I want to ask your permission to be able to post it to our social media channels, if you don't mind. Do you mind if I share this? This was awesome information, and something that I did not know about the ABLE Act is that I wasn't aware of the fact that anyone could deposit funds into the account. So that's great to know, especially for someone that wants to perhaps bless the individual with Christmas money or birthday money. So that's awesome. That's awesome information to know. So I do appreciate your time. I also want to let everyone know that if you want to know more about NieCat Foundation of Excellence, our website is NieCat, which is NIECAT NFE.org. So if you want to know more about our services, you may go into our website, which is again NIECAT NFE.org. This slide is going to be posted in all our social media channels in case you want to get in touch with Hiram or Natalie. I have worked with them for the last 2-3 years, and every time I listen to one of their presentations, I learn more. So the number is there. So Hiram's number is 786-525-4272. And I suggest you give him a call, because he does these presentations and he's not reading. This is really what he lives and what he knows. And this is why I'm always asking them to please come and always teach us something about the financial side of having a young adult, or just an adult period, with special needs. With that in mind, I want to thank everyone that's on the line. Thank you for coming. Thank you for choosing to learn again. And NieCat Foundation of Excellence is totally open for therapies. If you are looking to provide to have therapy for your young adult with special needs, please make sure to give us a call. The number is 305-761-5135. And again, our website is NieCatNFE.org. Hiram, thank you, sir. Blessings to you and all your boys.
Thank
Have,
you. Thank
have
you.
fun decorating your house and have a great weekend. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone,
you.
for being here and participating. Have a good day. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.